Welcome to episode 6 of the COVID Chronicles. I wanted to take just a few moments today and share with you some tokens for good that the Lord gave me in the land of the living, and they encouraged my spirit as well as strengthened my body during those days of isolation in Zimbabwe. You understand that I was largely self-medicating. I did not have the opportunity to seek out medical attention, and there were few things made available to me for treatment. I was very, very grateful that John Couch, one of our team members, left behind a bottle of a store brand of what is essentially Mucinex DM. I really didn't think that I would have need of it, but I found myself taking it regularly during those days because among my symptoms was a rather acute post-nasal drainage, which if not managed became dysfunctional and made it very difficult for me to do anything else. And so I discovered that 12-hour formulation of that medication was better taken on the 11th hour so that I could stay ahead of the curve and I could control the drainage and be able to carry on various other things. Thank you, John, for something very, very simple, but something that proved profound in my experience during those days. Tim Height, the pastor of GraceLife Church, shared with me at an early juncture that one of the things that he did was to irrigate his nasal passages with a simple saline solution. And so I went into the kitchen of the unit I was staying in. I found the salt shaker. I emptied its entire contents into a bottle of water, shook it up very well, and for multiple days I irrigated my nasal passages. I'm sure that they appreciated that, and it may have very well contributed to my nasal health and comfort as well. I didn't have much of an appetite for those 10 days. My appetite no doubt was suppressed by my loneliness as well as the COVID virus. And even though there were a number of food items left behind for me, I had to eat whatever I found appetizing. I disciplined myself to eat fresh fruit and nuts, which were in the unit, so that I was sure to get the kinds of vitamins and nutrients that I would need, even if I did not ingest very much along the way. I'm a great fan of the Zimbabwe cookie, the Proton cookie. And my team left behind a big bag of Proton cookies. And so I got some sugar and some carbs from that. There was a huge bag of sweetened granola, which became my friend during the course of those days. On 2 occasions, I tried room service because GraceLife was kind enough to leave me a credit with the lodge, which permitted me to order food delivered to my door. But the sodium level of my Zimbabwe friends in everything that I tried to eat was just repulsive to my sensitive system at that time. And I simply could not bring myself to eat very large quantities of that. And after 2 attempts, I simply abandoned room service and I ate what I could find in the unit. Among the more delightful things made available to me that I discovered were some sweetened blueberries covered in dark chocolate. Oh yes, I am a dark chocolate aficionado. Say dark chocolate and I'm right there immediately. And so many days I was greatly encouraged in my spirit, and my palate loved me because I ate those sweetened blueberries that were coated in dark chocolate. It was a very limited diet. Limited so much that I disciplined myself to make sure that I stayed thoroughly hydrated even though I was not eating very much. I knew that dehydration would land me in a very different situation, even with mild symptoms. And thankfully, my team had left me a full case of bottled water, which I pretty much disposed of during those 10 days of isolation. Though the water in Zimbabwe is typically quite trustworthy, I went back to an old habit that I typically follow when traveling abroad. I did everything with bottled water. My system was weakened, and I could not run the risk that anything would agitate my problems. And so I brushed my teeth and everything else with bottled water. As I said, I used bottled water and the salt from a salt shaker to create the saline solution with which I irrigated my nostrils during the course of those days. The lodge was very gracious to me. They were unable to have any human contact with me, but a very kind gentleman by the name of Daniel called me almost every day. He checked on my status. He wanted to know if there was anything that they could do. He tried to make the resources of the lodge available to me, even though I could not have direct contact with anyone on their staff. I can't say enough about the graciousness and the generosity of GraceLife Baptist Church in Christiansburg, Virginia. I traveled with their team. They went out of their way to see that I was not inconvenienced in any way during the isolation. They made advanced preparations so that I would not have to relocate to another facility, that I could stay right there in the lodge unit that I was already accustomed to, that was large and commodious, and I could make a home there for myself for a week and a half. They prepaid my expenses to that end. It was very much a Good Samaritan story, where the Samaritan paid the innkeeper in advance for the care of the man he left with him, and said, if there are any additional expenses, I'll take care of them when I return. They left me a modest credit, as I say, so I could acquire food items and other things through the lodge. And they made arrangements for me to have access to the internet for the entirety of that time, for both my laptop and my phone. Ordinarily, the lodge charges extra for the use of a second wireless device, but they waived that in my behalf, and they gave me essentially unlimited access to the internet for those days. Because I teach online, that was a huge, huge help to me. But even more important, since I was communicating almost solely via the internet, the ability to eat up large amounts of data online in various kinds of digital and virtual conversations with family members back home. The chance to talk with my wife and see her smiling face. The chance to talk with my daughter and see my two youngest grandchildren. The chance to talk to other family members along the way, and the chance to communicate with people in Zimbabwe as well during those days was a huge blessing to me. And so, among the many tokens for good in the land of the living, lest I fainted during those days. So many of them were directly traceable to my friends at GraceLife. I cannot say enough about my friend Tim Hyde and the good people of GraceLife Baptist Church who cared for a Baptist preacher and professor 3/4 of the way around the world who was all alone with the warthogs. God was good, and His goodness was manifested through His people. That's today's COVID Chronicles. I hope you'll tune in again when my wife and I talk to you about how our love grew and our romance blossomed during the days of my isolation.